one thing about Zoom is everybody looks ambulatory.
It's so true. I have been trying to figure out how I'm going to sit here and prop that stupid leg up to the sky for council meetings for a couple weeks.
Well, John and I were on a board meeting Zoom earlier today, and one of the board members is a double amputee above the knee, and he looked just like everybody else did on Zoom.
Great equalizer.
How was the golf course doing?
Yeah. Great guy. We've reached 7 o'clock. So I'd like to call this meeting of the Lakewood City Council for Monday, October 19th to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Boki,
Present.
Councilmember Brandstetter,
Here.
Councilmember Farmer,
Here.
Councilmember Moss,
Here.
Councilmember Simpson,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Whalen, looks like he's joining us now. There might be a delay for him to come to the screen.
Present.
Mayor Anderson,
Here.
you have a quorum?
Nice to see you, Jason.
Yeah, well, I'll be in a light soon, but I wanted to be timely.
All right. So the first item of business is proclamations and presentations. Item number 1 under that is proclamation declaring October 21st, 2020 as Lakewood Chamber of Commerce Day. And for this recognition, we should have Ms. Linda Smith, the president of the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce, online.
Mayor Anderson, it doesn't look like Ms. Smith has joined us yet this evening, but I have a Betty Bogus Whiskey who has raised her hand. I'm wondering if she's here to accept the proclamation on behalf of the Lakewood Chamber.
Buzuski, yeah. Okay.
Zoom. Yeah.
Zoom her in. Right, Betty, we have you on board. Can you unmute?
All right, am I unmuted?
You are unmuted.
Okay, well, I am really Sue Bogazuski, but my legal name is Betty, so it shows up on everything since that's how my computer is registered. Linda,
I know you, Sue. I wasn't sure who Betty was.
it's my evil twin.
I came to one of these meetings as Nancy's iPad, so.
There you go.
So what's your current position with the Lakewood Chamber, Sue?
I am membership representative, so I welcome and sign up our new members. And I also am, I work in the visitor bureau, so I help all the people that visit our visitor center to find the things they're looking for in Lakewood, as well as answering the phone and directing people to our fair businesses in Lakewood. I see Miss Linda has joined us now.
Yes. Greetings, Linda Smith.
So I will divert over to the boss.
Well, I have you in stereo now. So I'd like to recognize Lakewood Chamber with this proclamation. Whereas chambers of commerce work with businesses, merchants, industries, nonprofits, and government agencies to advance the civic, economic, industrial, professional, and cultural life of their communities. And whereas the city of Lakewood recognizes and values the dedication and entrepreneurial spirit of the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce and its integral role in helping the city, regional, and state economy grow stronger. And whereas in the mission, it is the mission of the city of Lakewood to work in partnership with Lakewood Chamber of Commerce to help our businesses grow and to provide employment within Lakewood by providing exemplary programs, education, referrals, resources, and representation. And whereas the Lakewood Chamber and its members provide citizens with a robust business environment that helps increase employment, retail trade, commercial commerce, and industrial growth in order to make the city of Lakewood a better place to live, work, and play. And whereas the future of the city of Lakewood depends on having a vibrant economy and a healthy business environment. And whereas the leadership of the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce provides for strong grassroots commitment to the economic well-being and future of Lakewood, now therefore the Lakewood City Council proclaims October 21, 2020 as Lakewood Chamber of Commerce Day and encourages the business community to join and engage in Lakewood Chamber's mission. Proclaimed this 19th day of October, 2020, Don Anderson, Mayor. And,
Yay!
well, we're going yay for you, Linda. So I pass a virtual mic to you and let you say a few words about what Lakewood Chamber of Commerce is doing in our new and challenging environment. But you're on mute. Can't hear you. It's like your mic went out. The mute sign isn't showing, but
Well, maybe we can get some comments from Sue then.
yeah, I think we might have to go to Sue. You were there momentarily, Linda, but it looks like it's almost like your mic's unplugged. So Sue, would you like to say a couple of words?
Yes, of course. On behalf of Linda and the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce, I want to say that we are the greatest chamber in the whole wide world. And we support our local businesses. We're out there knocking on doors, talking to people, doing Zoom meetings. Linda is working tirelessly. I think she's worked harder during this pandemic than she did before, trying to make sure that everybody knows that we're there for them. We appreciate the city and your support that you give us. I especially like the referrals that I get for any new businesses coming to town, because if we get them when they're hot, then that's the time to sign them up. So I want to especially thank Mary and Mike, who have helped a lot and helped me to identify people in the city that are chamber worthy. And part of the chamber is I feel is that it's important to belong to the chamber because we represent professionals. We represent Lakewood as a fine city to partnership with, to open your business here, and to let us help you promote your business in any way possible through the Lakewood Chamber. So thank you, City, for this proclamation. On behalf of Linda and the staff, we appreciate each one of you and all you do to help us with our mission.
Well, thank you. Sorry we couldn't have you vocal, Linda. We know you have a lot to say. So keep up the good work on behalf of the city. Is anyone on the council wish to make any comment? Well, thanks again.
I would love to.
Is that Jason?
The guy in the car. Yeah, exactly. I just want to extend my heartfelt appreciation for all that the chamber does for the small business community, especially in this trying time with COVID-19, and utilizing the resources not only that you have and promote, but also providing access through information to resources for the small business community. So thank you very much for your help.
And thank you again, and thanks for helping out with the city's COVID CARES Act project. So keep up the good work.
Happy to do it.
Mr. Brandstetter, I didn't see your hand there.
Yes, and I would want to thank the chamber for their role in both helping us distribute the materials that were gifted us from Gimhe, and also in participating in the video, thanking Jim Hay for that, that action.
Thank you. All right. Thanks again to Lakewood Chamber. We're happy to proclaim October 21st Lakewood Chamber Day, but every day is Lakewood Chamber Day in Lakewood. So
Thank you.
we'll see you around the internet.
Thank you, Mayor.
Now, we now move to public comment. This is when any member of the public may speak to any matter of pertinence to the city, whether or not it's on the agenda. Public comments in this COVID environment are accepted by mail, email, or live virtual comment. Please send your comments in advance by mail or email to Brianna Schumacher, City Clerk at 6000 Main Street, Southwest, Lakewood, Washington, 98499, or bschumacher@cityoflakewood.us. Comments received up to 1 hour before the meeting have been provided to council electronically. Comments, Madam Clerk, were any comments received?
Mayor Anderson, we have received no comments in advance of this evening's meeting.
Doesn't preclude making a comment. If you would like to provide live public comments, you will need to join this Zoom meeting as an attendee by calling on the telephone at 253-215-8782, numbers on the screen, and enter participant ID 868-7263-2373, or visit zoom.us and enter participant ID 868-7263-2373. Upon entering the meeting, please enter your name or other chosen identifier. Use the raised hand feature to be called upon. When you are unmuted, please provide your name and the city of Lakewood, such as Mary Moss, Lakewood, Washington. Each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. Outside of the public comments, all attendees on Zoom will continue to have the ability to virtually raise their hand for the duration of the meeting. However, you will not be recognized and your microphone will remain muted except for the time when you are called on for your 3 minutes of participation. I'll wait a moment here and see if anyone has attempted to sign on. Madam Clerk.
Mayor Anderson, we have Dennis Haugen.
All right. Mr. Haugen, you have your 3 minutes from South Dakota.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Just prior, I've been away for a couple of weeks here. But just prior to, kind of going out of sight for a little bit. You were Seattle, Portland, and I think New York were designated as anarchist jurisdiction. And that's a tough one. And then the night, as many nights, our own governor is inviting your police people to come to South Dakota and apply for a job where you as a policeman will be appreciated. And it's kind of interesting. I went back over the dates to listen to what people said. George Floyd was killed on May 25th. It was pretty obviously a murder. Should have been arrested right away. May 31st, the riots were on across the country. And in Sioux Falls, Christy Noem, our governor, was doing her due diligence, contacting the federal government, cities, counties, getting prepared. And of course, the federal government has a lot of intelligence gathered on just exactly how to take on a riot. And they can do it. It's totally controllable. It's just a matter of getting the manpower there. June 1, the church was burned in Washington, D.C., and that's when Washington, D.C. has its own, the president calls the National Guard. In the states, the governors do it. He put that little riot down even against the mayor's wishes, who he seemed to be even encouraging it. And then on June 2nd, June 2nd, William Barr called him in and they put it down. And then June 11th, Jenny Durkin called what had been going on for about 15 days of Love Fest. June 11th, your governor, Governor Inslee. In my opinion, he's like the legend Nero, who played the harp while Rome burned, as the legend goes. So they interviewed him, I think, on March 11th. These are all conversations you can find yourself. And he wasn't aware that anything was going on. He didn't know nothing. 15 days. He'd already had the National Guard in Seattle, but they couldn't have any weapons. And of course, riots were going on. A big piece of property was taken over. Many crimes were committed. Innocent people were killed. Now you can't escape.
Mr. Hagen, your 3 minutes is up. I realize you're probably on the phone, as we don't have your yellow and red lights here if you're not on the screen, but thank you for your participation.
Okay.
And we'll now go to Julian Wheeler. Mr. Wheeler, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you for allowing this public comment. It's good to see all of you safe and sound on Zoom, including Deputy Mayor Whalen, who I should say you're supposed to save the car chase scene to the end. But no, good to have everyone here safe. Mayor, I missed the coffees in person. I just don't wake up the same like I used to on those days of the month. I want to wish you all a happy National Disability Employment Awareness Month. I deposited some comments to that effect last week, and it was, of course, the first time I was able to really deposit comments on YouTube. I just got up to speed on that. Just to say thank you for all that you do as a council for advancing the accessibility and the awareness of bringing people with disabilities further into the mainstream, and not just as constituents and customers and end users, but also preparing the way for when people with disabilities, and I envision including those people in wheelchairs, in positions of leadership in our community. I just wanted to go ahead and emphasize that. The community is having a legislative forum on November 17 at 7 p.m. online. I will send that information out to the City Council individually. It's sponsored by a coalition of disability interest groups, including Washington PAVE, and is supported by the group that I head up, which is the Pierce County Accessible Communities Advisory Committee. And I just want to offer our services as an advisory committee to the City Council, to the City of Lakewood. We can help expedite funds if there are any projects that address newly discerned needs in the community to make our facilities and infrastructure more accessible. Because when you make the society work for the marginalized, you make it work better for everyone. And I just want to put that thought out there and congratulate everyone here on adapting to the Zoom. I agree with the comment made at the start that there are trade-offs with Zoom. So I won't tell you when I last shaved, but you can't see me in that case, hopefully. But thank you all for your support of disabilities issues and advancing the rights of everyone, including people with disabilities. Now, I would say please get home safe, but it seems that most of you already are home. So thank you again, and hope you have a good, productive meeting.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, is there anyone else queued up?
Mayor Anderson, no one else has raised their virtual hand to provide comments this evening.
So I'll call again. If there's anyone who wishes to make public comment, please complete signing on. We're going to call this a day on public comment. Is there anyone else who wishes to make public comment? Seeing none, I declare public comment closed. We now move to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk.
A, approval of the minutes of the city council meeting of October 5th, 2020. B, approval of the minutes of the city council special meeting of October 7th, 2020. C, motion number 2020-52, authorizing the execution of an agreement with the Humane Society for Tacoma and Pierce County for animal sheltering and related services. D, motion number 2020-53, authorizing the execution of agreements with Tacoma Pierce County Habitat for Humanity for the acquisition and development of affordable housing at 15121 Boat Street Southwest and 15123 through 15125 88th Ave Court Southwest. E, motion number 2020-54, appointing the 2021 through 2022 biennial legislative agenda, legislative policy manual, 2021 federal priorities, and 2021 Pierce County policy manual. F, motion number 2020-55, authorizing the purchase of a safe boat for the Police Department Marine Services Unit. G, motion number 2020-56, reappointing Patty Bell, Earl Borger, Paige Hansen, Linda McDermott, Lonnie Neal, and appointing Falua Pritchard to serve on the Lakewoods Arts Commission through October 16th, 2023. H, items filed in the Office of City Clerk. 1, Lodging Tax Advisory Committee meeting minutes of September 13th, 2019. 2, Public Safety Advisory Committee meeting minutes of February 5th, 2020. 3, Arts Commission meeting minutes of March 2nd, 2020. 4, Public Safety Advisory Committee meeting minutes of June 3rd, 2020.
Thank you. Is there any item on the consent agenda which any member of the council wishes to have removed? Hearing none, I entertain a motion.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Simpson, seconded by Mr. Whalen, that we adopt the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Move to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business to come before the council?
There is none, Mayor.
We now move to new business. Is there any new business to come before the council?
Not this evening, Mayor.
And that brings us to reports by the city manager, Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. First off, I'd like to call upon one of our planning managers for strategic and long-range planning, Tiffany Spear. She'd like to give you an update in terms of where we are with the CARES Act funding. And I think, as you know, we're under a very, very tight timeline in terms of allocating and spending these monies. And we're at a point, I think, as we pointed out to you about over a month ago, where we would come back to you with any excess funds that we believe are available and look at making those available to buy down the costs that the city's general fund has incurred as it relates to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know Ms. Spear, she included a memo and a detailed update in your packet, and there are some changes to that in terms of the amount of money that's available. But with that, what I'd like to do is call upon Ms. Spear to give you a briefing and a recommendation. And Mayor, what we're looking for is some consensus from this body to move forward one way or the other with these available funds. And again, our recommendation is to utilize them to fund the costs that the city has incurred.
Okay.
Ms. Spear.
Ms. Spear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. And if you were to go to your packets right now, it would be on page 100 to look at the memo, but it is outdated, as the city manager just said. I'll share my screen now to bring you the latest information. So to date, the city has been awarded 2 rounds of CARES funding by the state of Washington, and with totals of $2,685,150. There was a resolution passed by the city council in June after the first round was awarded to explain that there were certain budget priorities and certain policies that the council wanted the staff to use when distributing the dollars. When the second round of funds came, this was affirmed by the city council, and then the additional focus on commercial landlords was added, if you'll recall your discussion in September. We are at the point now where we have about 4 weeks left of time to use the funds and then get the paperwork that's required to be finished back to the Department of Commerce for the end of the year. And because of where we are with the disbursements, there is some unspent money, unallocated money that the city manager mentioned. And as he also said, it is recommended that the rest of these dollars be used for costs that the city has incurred, whether it be personal protective equipment purchases for the public when they come to city events or facilities, or for staff themselves, to improvements to the city's facilities, or IT expenditures needed to help adjust into this COVID world of operations, and then also for payroll. So where we sit right now, I'll walk you through this chart. On the left, you'll see the various categories, first of all, of how dollars have been allocated, since round one. So you have small business, then the commercial landlord, which was included in round two, human services providers, childcare providers, public partners, and that's been a loose term used for West Pierce Fire and Rescue, Lakewood Water District, the Lakewood Public Library, and Nourish Pierce County. And then you have the city facilities, IT and PPE, and then payroll costs, which were allocated in the second round of funding. So if we go back up to the top, you'll see that almost $720,000 has gone to small businesses. An additional $252,000 approximately went out through the commercial landlord program. The human services program is almost $614,000. Almost $73,000 has gone to child care providers, which provide services to city residents. Public partners have received a little over $200,000. And then again, there was those dollars that were allocated by the council for round two to the city's costs. If you go to the next column, what you'll see here, I'm sorry.
Before we leave that column, can we leave it up?
Sure.
So define eligible.
Eligible meaning the costs and the applications were all eligible under the criteria set out by the Department of Treasury and the Department of Commerce's guidelines to the city, and then also the city's programs as they were put out for the various grants.
So those are out, those funds have been allocated.
Those are all allocated. They're not all distributed, but they are all allocated.
That's my concern here. It looks
Right.
like well under half of the allocated funds have not been distributed. What's the hangup?
It is the process that twice a month the city puts the dollars out to recipients. So the next time will be on October 30th, and there is about $500,000, I think, going out on that day.
Okay.
That gets us to $1.3 million dispersed at that point. 822 plus 500,000.
We've got a dispersal date of October 30th and then November 15th. That'll be the last time that the disbursements can happen. The lion's share of what has not been.
Wait a second on that. I think that's a council decision, whether we want to have a special, the state gives us till the end of November. So an artificial deadline of when we process checks shouldn't limit our ability to get aid out. I've been dealing with this a lot lately, and the problem is the throughput. And I'm concerned that our policy is to get aid to the community may be defaulting to money in the city's pocket because we aren't processing it well enough. And this is the first time I've seen that we're this far behind in getting the money out the door. So why can't we make a dispersal on November 29th?
I would turn to the city manager to make that direction. That's something that is a financial policy that the department uses right now.
Yeah, so Mayor Anderson, so yeah, you're right. We certainly could be able to do that. We do special check runs periodically. So if we have a need to have to do that, we will do that.
Yeah, so yeah, because my thought on that is that whatever we do if we have enough eligible expense for the city to clean out the till, that we do that on the last day. Because there may be some, if we've got so much that's undispersed right now, there may be glitches in getting that out too. it happens.
I think the major delay that you see in the disbursement has been solved. What occurred at first is you had the call for applications, and then there was the processing of that internally, and then there was the announcement of the awards, and then there was a delay of getting the information back from the applicants. And then once that was done, then there was however long it went to the next check run, if you want to call it that. We did do one special check run already once, and as the manager has said, we could do that again. But I think we're past the worst of the delays, and really you're going to see by November 15th, the lion's share of what's been allocated will be gone, if not all of it. And then if there needs to be a final check run before November 30th, that's certainly possible.
Well, thanks for your explanation. I'm sorry to knock you off your horse, so give you the opportunity to get back on it.
Okay. So the city facilities and IT and PPE costs, and then the city payroll costs that are eligible as of last Friday already exceed by 2 or 3 times the amount that was allocated by the city council. There have been some reimbursements back to the city, just so you're aware. So far, 495,000 and change has come back to the city from Department of Commerce due to the process to reimburse the city once things are sent out to third parties. And our next one will be at least that much, if not more. One thing to note here, and this is what a lot of the focus of the rest of this presentation will be on, these two numbers and the payroll one in particular does not include costs that are now eligible based on the latest findings or holdings, if you want to call it that, by both Department of Treasury and the Department of Commerce. So in September, those two departments, federal and state, made the determination that 100% of public safety employee payroll is now eligible because they are deemed automatically to be substantially dedicated to COVID-19 duties. And so if you were to go back and look at the cost of from March 1st to October 15th, the cost of the city's public safety officers, not including extra duty, which is not eligible, and not including the cost of certain employees that have already been reimbursed through the CARES Act funds, there is a 9.8 million eligible cost within the city for reimbursement through this program should the city council direct it.
So I have a question there. This is a pretty controversial interpretation. I know South Dakota, I think Mr. Haugen would approve. South Dakota has taken the position that all their law enforcement funds expended are eligible. The problem here is the interpretation under vague guidelines. As of a few days ago, they hadn't clarified it. They had a September 3rd guideline that said just what you said, but it doesn't clarify what the supplanting language means. So the more conservative majority opinion among finance officers across the country right now is that there is a substantial risk to trying to backfill law enforcement budgets if, while they are considered attributable to COVID by default, that's an administrative convenience, they aren't considered to be outside the prior budget. And so the supplanting, most people are saying that the supplanting language of the act actually prohibits the application of CARES Act funding to already budgeted law enforcement needs. So there's still a lot of doubt there. So I'd be very cautious absent some very clear Treasury guidance of relying on that too heavily. South Dakota is, one other state is, there's another place where the legislature is fighting the governor, but it's up in the air.
Well, this direction was provided by this Washington State Department of Commerce to all of the recipients of this grant as of September 20th's interpretation from the Department of Treasury. So I don't know if something happened between September 3rd and 20th or not. But Commerce was extremely clear with everybody that is a recipient here in Washington State that this is something that's eligible reimbursable costs. Is
Did
all
they-
I can say.
Did they mention the supplanting language?
No, they said this is the language from the Department of Treasury's interpretation. This is what we agree with, so you're allowed to use it this way.
Okay. But that's why my point is there are two conflicting provisions. I don't, my concern is I don't want to give it back.
Okay. So if the council takes a look at the costs that are eligible as of last Thursday or Friday, and first you've got the facilities IT improvements and then the PPE costs. You have the city payroll, which this is not the public safety we've just been talking about. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the amount of staff that is not anticipated. It was being substantially different purpose this year. It's not the 9.8 million. The total city costs for reimbursement potentially through these dollars is 712,000 and change. So far, we've had about 194,000 of that reimbursed. So there still remains $518,086.21 that has not yet been reimbursed, regardless of the public safety question. There is a remainder of unallocated funds of $527,855. If you were to take the 518,000 against that, you would end up with about $9,769, not including the public safety. If you were to try to allocate any of the public safety employee costs, that of course would take it down to zero pretty quickly. So given the time that it has taken to process the grants programs that we've done so far, which include small businesses, commercial landlords, 2 rounds of child care, the public partners, and then the human services partners, up to this point, the people that have been administering this program are recommending back to you, Mr. Mayor, that the costs be, the city's costs be what the remainder of the funds be used for. We are down to about 4 more weeks to where we could potentially do another call for grants, an acceptance of applications, an analysis of what's applied for, making sure that it is accurate and complete, and then turning around and doing the back and forth with applicants. And then having also before the end of the year, the time for the our finance department to get everything in. We're suggesting that it may be a better use to go with reimbursing the city's costs. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the information. Ms. Spear, could you put that chart with the columns on it and the numbers about dispersed and not dispersed and such back up?
Sorry, 1 second. This one?
Yes, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so when I look at that and it says we haven't dispersed any commercial landlord dollars, but there is a check run coming up. Are we at the point of where we've approved applications to that 251,739 amount?
Yes, and so that this column here that says eligible as of, the small business, commercial landlord, human services, childcare, and public partner, these numbers here, these are all allocated to the various people. They just haven't physically been given the money. So there isn't more decision making to be made with those dollars. They just need to go out with the next run.
Okay, so were there any small business applicants that didn't pass through the system to be eligible?
There were 10, I believe, if not 11, that did not make it through the first round that did receive their grants in the second round. So we don't have any more that are still waiting.
So there aren't any, there's no administrative processing, there's only check writing to go for that last $50,000 in small business.
Correct.
Because we've dispersed 657 and we've approved 718. Is that right? Where I read that?
Correct.
Okay. And all the commercial landlords have been approved. They just a question of writing the checks.
Yes, last week we got all of the paperwork back from them. It started several weeks prior, so they are all going to be paid on October 30th.
So human services was done in a different way than the business loans and things for applications. So what is that is that 613? Does that represent contracts that people have to still request reimbursement for?
Exactly. Yes. All of the money has been identified to go to particular partners, but they have not yet requested the money to be reimbursed back to them. So we're just waiting.
So I guess, is there really $600,000 that if nobody asks for is going to be there?
Up until the last day where there may be some pennies left out of that 613, 640, but they are all aware per their contract that they can ask up to their contract's amount through, depending on when they signed their contract, October 31st or November 30th.
But what is the feedback from the contracted agencies? Are any of them been polled as to whether they're going to actually be able to perform to the scope that they'll be able to request a full reimbursement? Or are any of them indicated that they will have any money to be back? And did we give them a date that if they decide to return any money, that we've got some time?
Let's see. They were informed of the date that was their deadline to get their reimbursement requests in. I'm not aware of them being told a date that they would, come back to us and say, if you're not going to spend your money, and we'll be able to allocate it elsewhere. The way the contracts were set up, there was a discussion at the start as to what they felt their capacity would be, what type of services they would provide. What we've heard back from LASA, which is the one that got, if you'll recall, $407,000 out of this total. They had a slow start to getting their funds dispersed, but they are now working on that better. And just today I received an application, or excuse me, the paperwork for some of their reimbursement.
So that reimbursement date, is that like November 15th?
I'm sorry, for the various third parties, be they the small businesses or any of the others, November 30th is the last day, the last time we would be able to cut a check and disperse them dollars, because our own department needs time to get everything put all together and submitted back to the Department of Commerce by the end of the year. And everybody who's received funds, been awarded funds, they know that. And so we're just waiting between now and then. And we're telling them November 15th in order to be able to cut a check for them on the 30th, because obviously there's time to process. So they are all aware that they, in theory, still have 4 weeks to submit, or a little less than 4 weeks to submit their reimbursement requests.
And so if I interpret your recommendation, if one of those partners, and let's say LASA comes up $200,000 short of their allocation to be able to document for reimbursement, that then you would, the recommendation would be that that 200,000 would then revert down into to the city payroll line?
No, because they have until that last day to submit their paperwork. If you mean by November 15th, they haven't spent it, would we be recommending to you that the city spend it? I don't know the answer to that question. In theory, the city could do that since there's a total that they were allocated by the state. Or it could be simply that the city doesn't spend it at all and it's never requested as a reimbursement back to the city from Commerce.
And I think that what we're trying to avoid is having money we don't request from Commerce because it's not been dispersed. And so having some difference between when we say, we need to know from LASA, are you going to spend it all? And using them as an example, or so that we can use it somewhere else, because your presentation seems to indicate there is a somewhere else. But if we wait on LASA till the last day, the time to do the bureaucratic things may cause us to have to return some of that money without benefiting it.
Well, I'm sorry.
And I would also say, going back to the mayor's previous concerns about doing that, and you indicated that we had done a special check run once in this process before, that we strongly considered doing a check run on November 20. I guess November 23rd, or that would be a week before November 30th. And if November 30th isn't a day to do a check run, then the previous Friday is the 27th. Just so that we can get some data, or do it the previous Friday so that at the council study session on the 23rd, we can have a really good picture of what's going to happen in the last week after the last time we meet in November. It does seem that there's a real possibility that some folks won't be able to execute on all of their contracts, and we wanted to have at least enough time for the finance staff to re-push things around. Okay, but thank you. The chart is very helpful the way that it's laid out, and I'm even if it's only helpful for me to frame question. So thank you.
And Mr. Branstetter, if I could, just to clarify, the grant itself is reimbursement based. So we cannot send any dollars out to a small business or a landlord or a nonprofit until they have spent the money and then have submitted their paperwork. And so if we cut off their time, which per the term of the contract is November 30th now, if we tell them, but you can't do this until only up until November 15th, you can't use the last 2 weeks of your contract terms, that causes some difficulty as well, perhaps. So we've been trying to weigh when we tell them they have to get their paperwork in versus what the deadline is for doing so per the contract itself. The city has not received any money yet from Commerce other than what it has physically put out. It's operating on a reimbursement basis as well. So we don't have dollars sitting in the city of Lakewood's account anywhere waiting to disperse. We disperse first and then get dollars back from Commerce after the fact.
Yeah, I think though that those agencies that have a reimbursement contract with us, that they have a November 30th, that date of that contract is not the date through which they can disperse money. That's the date by which they must request reimbursement. Is that not right?
November 30th is the date that they need to send us back receipts, check stubs, whatever the materials need to be to justify the cost that they're asking be paid for through this grant. Yes.
So they have some earlier time when they have to actually write checks and create that documentation. They couldn't, it'd be really very difficult for them to write a check to a landlord, say, on the 30th, and then also turn around and provide us all the documentation with all the invoices and things by that time. So there's got to be some date backing up that each of them have determined is their date by which they could do it, knowing their own administrative processes to be able to create their necessary paperwork to give to us. Is that they can't be having someone come into their office on the 30th, fill out an application process, give them a check, and then still meet all of our deadlines. So I think that there is some sort of a reasonable conversation to have with each of them for them to get a picture from them. Are they really going to be able to disperse all that money and request a reimbursement? That's not uncommon in reimbursement type contracts. It's actually not any different than what the city did to all the holders of lodging tax contracts this year, where we went out and sent out a thing and asked, are you going to be able to use all your money? And I think it would help clarify the picture with some of those folks that have a lot of money and only a 1% reimbursement to date, to at least ask that question and give them the opportunity rather than at the last minute be surprised.
We can certainly attempt that. The last point that I would make as well for the council is that you know this, you're in the middle of your budget process, and the finance department is in the middle of trying to figure out budget adjustments and addendums, and as well as the next 2-year biennial budget. So what we're doing here is trying to cement this down as well for that process, for you to get the information from Ms. Kraus and city manager about the city's budget per the end of this year, as well as the next 2. So I guess I'd turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor, and see if there's any other questions.
Any other questions from council? I guess I have a couple related. Is there any unmet need that we know of on small business grants or childcare?
Not that we're aware of, no. The ability for businesses now to be seeking funds from a number of different places, including the county as well as the city. People are starting to say, well, we're just going to do something different. Some of them that have given that answer back to Ms. Newton as she's reached out to them. And then in terms of childcare providers, we went back through the lists from the State Department of Licensing and located an additional 25 childcare providers. That's where the dollars went out of that second $50,000 allocation. So we're not aware of any others waiting to say yes or no to this grant. Say, well, we're just going to do something different. Some of them that have given that answer back.
It's a good enough answer, you give it twice.
I guess.
Any other questions? Comments? Mr. Bulkey? Oh, okay. All right. This back to you, Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you, Mayor. So while Ms. Spear is still here, so again, our recommendation is there's over $526,000 that's currently not allocated. And our recommendation is to charge that off to the $518,000 that the city has incurred to date that is not subject to a reimbursement. So is the council okay with that, or do you want us to wait until November and kind of keep the clock running and report back to you at that time?
I got a question on that.
Mr. Whalen.
Well, I'd be inclined to do that, Mr. Caulfield, but is it worth holding off and keeping some of the money in reserve just to see if there's some unmet need that pops up out of the blue in the next 30 days? Or does that restrict our time measurably so that we can't be nimble enough to make that decision?
It does not. The fact of the matter is that we've done an incredible amount of outreach to all,
Right.
and quite frankly, I think somebody said it earlier, we don't want to give any of this money back. So one way or the other, we want to try and capture it all. And that's why Ms. Spear and I are before you this evening, sooner rather than later, to try and get some direction from you to allocate these monies. If a matter of fact, the reason, your original memo, we were at $580,000, but between the time that this memo was prepared, or what's in your packet rather, which was last Tuesday or Wednesday, we received, some feedback from a couple of other agencies requesting funding, and so that 580 came down to 526. So could we wait another month or so? Yeah, we could. But again, right now, we're not aware of anything that's out there that we haven't already either reached out to or tried to cover. And I think, as you've heard from me before, there are other sources of funding that a lot of folks in Lakewood are going to, particularly Pierce County.
Right.
That's something that we have proactively done as part of our outreach. And there's been a number of occasions where we've heard from businesses or individuals saying, "Nah, I'm good. I don't need Lakewood money. I've gotten money from Pierce County."
And maybe this is a question for the mayor and maybe Paul on their day job. Do you think there could be a need where we might want to hold money to give to agencies that provide, additional testing or flu vaccination in combination with what we see, maybe, a increase in COVID activity in the fall? Is there any value in doing that? Some public service agency or public health agencies that don't have as much, they're getting tons of funding from the county, it looks like. You're on mute there, Don.
I was muted. I don't see a need for funding. The logistics and the actual flu vaccine's a bigger problem than the delivery, because that's many months in the making as part of a supply chain and allocation. So I don't see where that's a direct need. I would favor waiting until maybe a week before the deadline to actually make I'm in favor of washing whatever's left into the city coffers. I think that's perfectly legitimate, but I'd like to sit on it. Things change daily and weekly, and there may be something that comes up. I think it's definitely too late for new programs. The only other alternative would be to dial things that we've already done, give additional money to the prior recipients on some sort of allocation basis. That'd be clumsy, but it's at least you could pull it off.
Right.
If you try to invent something new, it's not going to happen in time. But in case a bomb goes off, I'd rather sit on it for a month.
Right.
Mr. Bulkey?
Yeah, first of all, the flu vaccine one, the county they've allocated CARES Act money to the health department. And I don't know if the health department's actually the one, but there's an agreement with the county, I think, for umpteen thousand flu vaccinations. And that's really, and then they're building up the infrastructure around that, as Don mentioned, which is fairly expensive. So we probably, although the flu vaccine is a big deal because they're really, really are concerned about the onset of the flu season. But it sounds like the county's kind of got their arms wrapped around it. We really just need to make sure that they come into Lakewood and give us the opportunity to get some shots. I would be fine waiting at least until our first regular meeting in November, a couple of weeks to see where this is going. It is too late to start new programs, I think, and we're running into the same thing in my day job. It's incredible that some agencies really have a difficult time getting ramped up to spend the money. So I don't know how much more we can do with what we've got. But waiting is fine with me. I just don't know that I care to wait too long. I'm glad to hear though that most of this money has actually been spent, and so that when we bill a lot of this money, but I think we need an update right after the first of the month, so that we know that all these bills got paid and where we're at as of our first meeting of November, which I guess will be on the 2nd, huh? Yeah. So I would appreciate that.
Anyone else?
So Mayor, I think what we can do is we can provide you a snapshot of where we are on November 2nd, for the council at your upcoming meetings, November 2nd, November 9th, November 16th, and November 23rd. So we'll plan on doing that under reports by the city manager.
Okay.
I have one other quick question, if I may.
Mr. Whalen.
So John, assuming that we have the opportunity to properly backfill, pick a number, 520,000, would this go against the budget adjustment for 2020?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, it would. Yes, this is all 2020 costs. The other thing I'm a little anxious about is, this is reimbursement based, so the city is fronting the monies out of our existing cash, and then we got to go and request reimbursement from Commerce.
For all these other recipients or our own?
Yes, all of it.
Right.
All of it.
That could be challenging. Let's hope that.
I mean, we're fine, but we're losing, investment interest, whatever. I mean, it's not a lot, but
Right.
The old adage, you count your pennies, the dollars take care of themselves.
Right, exactly. And you guys are good at counting the pennies. I appreciate it.
Found a dime today.
Yeah, good. Keep it. You may need it.
He stopped on the dime.
Yeah. As long as we can turn on a dime, that's the flexibility we want.
Mayor, once again, you have lost control of the meeting, sir.
I have assistance.
Okay, but Mayor and Council will report back to you on all of your upcoming meetings in November.
Okay, Mr. Simpson.
No, I'm good, Mayor. City Manager just answered my question.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Caulfield?
Yes, Mayor, I have a few other updates that I'd like to share. Next is, I think, as you know, myself and our team here at the city, actually a team representative from the city and the school district have been working together on the issues of diversity, equity, inclusion. And on the city side, it has been myself and our HR director. And then on the school district side, it's been the school superintendent. And they have an actual manager of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And earlier this evening, I sent you a letter that both the school superintendent and I drafted. It's a joint letter to our respective legislative bodies, committing to partner on issues in terms of collaborating on issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and to share resources across organizations. This is something that, we've been having a discussion probably since about August or so. The collaboration that we've already identified include advertising key job postings on each entity's respective websites, given that sometimes we have different communities that we're able to outreach to. Another is to share community resources as it relates to interview panels and things like that for jobs. And some of this we actually have done in the past, and it's something that we want to not only continue, but even perhaps ramp out. Also sharing expertise and resources regarding this subject matter. The school district actually has, as I noted, a manager of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in the proposed budget, I have recommended one on the city side. So if we had something there, we could do some additional collaboration and partnering. And then, probably the big one that would involve the two legislative bodies, and again, just kind of planting the seed, as a part of this joint letter is, some joint community listening sessions. Preferably once we get into, phase 4, hopefully that'll be in the early part of 2021. And I think that's, the superintendent and I both agree that I think that would be very, very important, and something that as organizations and you folks as elected leaders should do. And so that's the purpose of the letter. And again, just wanted to, communicate that the superintendent and I are on the same frequency in terms of, wanting to partner and collaborate together on this particularly important item, especially given what's going on in the world today. A couple of other updates. We received a request last week for some police overtime from Sound Transit that they would pay for. Looks like Sound Transit is ramping up to do a testing cycle on the Point Defiance bypass rail. They plan on testing trains through that corridor on November 14th and 15th during the day from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. This kind of came as a bit of a surprise. We weren't expecting this. And so obviously this is something that's in advance of them allowing Amtrak to return on their tracks. So one of the things that we have asked Sound Transit is, okay, you're getting closer to allowing Amtrak to do that. And it could be that this is just part of their safety protocols, which actually my gut instinct is telling me it is. But again, I just wanted to make the council aware. And as I get additional updates from Sound Transit, we'll be sure to share that with you. Also on Friday, we received some not so positive news from WashDOT. They have been directed to pause all real property acquisitions on a number of their projects, including the connector road. That's the WashDOT needs mostly construction easements from the Tacoma Country and Golf Course or Golf Club, as well as a very small portion of acquisition. And I know that WashDOT and the Country Club had been in ongoing negotiations over probably going on a year and a half now or so. However, WashDOT was directed to put that on pause, to stop that, and that it's not going to be re-engaged until after the state legislature concludes their session as part of the 2021 session. And the reason for this is it's all budgetary. The transportation budget, like most budgets at the state level, is taking a hit. So that's kind of what we know. One of the things that we do want to know is the project at risk, and the response we got back from that. It's going to be up to the state legislature in 2021 whether or not this project continues. It is funded, but again, from a cash flow standpoint, we'll see what happens there. At your next regular meeting on November 2nd, our Public Works Engineering Director will be before you regarding the parking proposal over by Lakewood Gardens. And I know that's something that council asked us to report back on. Last week, representatives from our Public Works Engineering Department did meet with executive leadership and a board member from the Lakewood Gardens, and came at another revised option we call option 3. And basically what it would do is it would result in not 36 parking stalls, but 32 with some enhanced landscaping. In addition, Lakewood Gardens is interested in taking on the plantings as well as the maintenance of quite a bit of the landscaping within that public right of way. So for the city, that would actually be a very good thing. So we are going to present that option to you for your review on November 2nd, as well as the other options as well, which would be either no parking or even further reduced parking. Though the concern with that option is that it really limits ingress and egress out of the site. So, but again, just wanted to give you a courtesy heads up that we have closed the loop there with Lakewood Gardens. On the economic development front, if you see some folks roaming around at the former G.I. Joe's, that is actually Altitude Trampoline. They are moving forward with tenant improvements, which is a very good thing. And so just wanted to give you a heads up on that. The last item I would like to brief you on is, I think you're aware that last week the Washington State Supreme Court ruled that Initiative 976 which was overwhelmingly approved by the voters, was ruled unconstitutional and was struck down because it had multiple subjects in it. And also the Supreme Court ruled that the ballot title was misleading. So a couple of things to report. Now that the court has ruled, the Department of Licensing was told to not stop collecting the money from anybody. And so they have subsequently been passing that revenue on to the city as it relates to our $20 vehicle license fee in support of our transportation benefit district. So we've actually been collecting it, and we've been holding it in a deferred liability account in the event that the Supreme Court ruled that it was constitutional and we would have to give it back. So now that the court has ruled that it is unconstitutional, we are now going to move forward with booking that revenue as revenue in the Transportation Benefit District Fund. And it's estimated that 2020 collections are going to total $835,000. As a council, you have a number of projects that you had identified that this money could be used for. Right now we're in the middle of the 21-22 proposed biennial budget process. And as I noted in my budget message a couple of weeks ago, there's several options or even hybrids of these options that the council can pursue. The first one would be legislatively, you could rescind the $20 vehicle license fee here in Lakewood. Another option, option two, would be to continue with essentially the pay-as-you-go option, the pay-as-you-go model that you currently have in place, where that it's about $830,000 now a year, is allocated in support of a number of projects. The third option, which is something that was presented to you at your September 28th, 2019 retreat, would be to leverage all or a portion of those funds to allow more projects to be done sooner, because you could bond those dollars over a 20-year period. That would generate $11.3 million if the whole $800+ thousand was leveraged into bonds. My recommendation is kind of a two-step. And again, I think this is something that you could have a conversation as part of the upcoming budget discussions. But I think first and foremost, for the 2020 monies that we have in hand and that we're going to collect by the end of the year, and again, it's estimated to be $835,000. My recommendation as part of the upcoming 2021-22 budget is to allocate $640,000 of that in support of the 2022 chip seal program and pavement patching minor capital major maintenance program, which again, those two programs total $640,000. It's also recommended that the remaining $195,000 be traded out with REIT monies that are currently allocated in support of the JBLM North Access Project, which is Gravely Lake Drive between Washington Boulevard and Nyanza, because that project previously had TBD monies, but since they went away, or they were supposed to go away, we funded it with REIT monies. And the reason I would recommend that is because you have greater flexibility with the REIT monies than you do the TBDs, and then that would free up REIT monies for additional park or transportation projects as they come about. So that's my first recommendation as it relates to the 21-22 proposed budget. And then I think there's the larger policy issue of what you as a body want to do. And one suggestion would be to wait to make that decision until February 2021. And the reason being is because there's a number of grant applications that the city has applied for that we will know the results of beginning later this month into November, and then no later than January 31st, 2021. And so once we know that, then if this body wished to move forward with continuing to collect the revenue, you would have before you other revenue sources to which to leverage and balance, whether you wanted to go pay as you go, debt financing, or a combination thereof. Also, as it relates to kind of the next round of big projects, 2 years ago, you identified 5 big projects, several which are already completed and 2 that will be completed this year. And then the last one, which is Gravelly Lake Drive from Washington Boulevard to Nyanza, will be done next year. Actually, 2 of the major ones are Veterans and Onyx under construction this year, as well as Stilican Boulevard. But the next round of projects that we talked about with the council again at your September 29th retreat, and that I included in the budget message a couple of weeks ago, would be Custer Road between Bridgeport and Lakewood Drive, the fill-in of sidewalks on Custer on the other side between John Dower and Bridgeport, the Nyanza, completing the loop around Gravelly Lake from Gravelly Lake Drive to 112th, 112th between Gravelly Lake Drive and Bridgeport, which would also have a positive impact on Clover Park High School. And then 100th from Lakeview Drive or the railroad tracks to South Tacoma Way, that's a major entrance into our commercial area in our town center and is in dire need of some work. Another project that the council might want to consider is Stilican Boulevard from Weller to 83rd or even 87th. The reason that project was not included on the list that I just outlined to you is because we were thinking that we were going to get PSRC funding to continue the construction of that. The project is at 60% design, right-of-way acquisition, and construction easements are well underway. It's expected that that project will be ready to bid this time next year, if not sooner, meaning that construction would occur in 2022. The other projects that I listed, the soonest we would be able to get to those projects would be design in 2022 and construction beginning in 2023. But given that corridor, it's interesting, in most communities, north-south corridors are the heavily traveled roadways. So you would think Pacific Highway and South Tacoma Way and Bridgeport, but it's not. The most heavily traveled roadway in Lakewood is actually Stilican Boulevard, including that area that is currently, from Custer to Weller, and now Weller to 83rd to 87th. There's a lot of traffic that goes through there, over 30,000 vehicles a day. So again, something to consider. But again, in summary, my recommendation is to fund the unfunded chip seal and overlay pavement patching program and chip seal in 2022, and then come back in February of 21 from a policy standpoint and see what you want to do once we have an understanding of where our grants are. Now, of course, if you wish to discontinue the $20 vehicle license fee, you can do that at any time. So with that, Mayor, that's my report.
Mr. Whalen.
Thank you very much. A couple of questions, Mr. Caulfield. The option of leveraging the funds by bonding some of the projects is appealing because we can expand our leverage with that. My question to you, though, what happens, let's say 2, 3, 4 years down the road in an 8 to 10 year bonding project, if the citizens pass in an initiative that actually passes muster, then you've obligated funds that may not come to fruition. That's what Sound Transit was concerned about, as I understand it, in King County with the last go around.
So Deputy Mayor, that's correct. But at the same time, we would need to go talk to, legal counsel about this and get a more definitive answer rather than one from me. But I firmly believe that if the monies are bonded, then the collection would still be allowed until those bonds are repaid.
Okay. I'm supportive of the allocation of the 2022 chip sealing projects. I think that does make good sense. We may have to have a retreat as a policy body to talk about projects and application of future funds, but I agree with your recommendation for the funds sitting in the account.
Mr. Branstetter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I appreciate the city manager's report to us and recommendations in this regard. Like the deputy mayor, the money that has been banked during 2020, I think certainly allocating the 640,000 to the 2022 chip seal patching program that is a hole in the biennial budget that we were looking at makes good sense to me. However, I think city manager is doing his job by proposing to us how the money could be spent to best advantage going forward. But I think, maybe the three lawyers that are on the panel were not surprised by the decision. But the Supreme Court's decision was different than what I think many in the community were expecting, or at least hoping for. And this does put a policy question back on our table about, in recognition of how voters did vote in Lakewood, about the future viability of us continuing with a local car tabs collection. That's not a simple issue about the voters who voted one way or another, because what the voters voted for was not the simple question of should Lakewood continue to collect $20 in car tabs. But I think that we have an obligation to the community to look at that question about going forward. Is that a taxing revenue that we want to continue? And that we should have, apart from how we would spend whatever money there is and forever how long, we should move forward to take a look at that issue and what do we think the community wants. And I'd ask you to put some time on next week's study session agenda for the council to just discuss and maybe not come to fruition, to a conclusion about what to do about the future of the transportation benefit district revenue stream, because there are options other than car tabs. But to at least discuss so we can share our collective thoughts around that, and perhaps a discussion about process to make a decision going forward. And if you could put that on the agenda, I would formally request that you do.
Honestly, I'm not inclined to do that unless two council members ask at this point. And the reason being that my feeling personally is that for this $20, the citizens of Lakewood get a tangible, concrete in some case, result. It's the best $20 that comes out of car tabs. Unfortunately, there's hundreds of dollars in car tab fees that go to things that people disapprove of. And so I have a hard time coming to the conclusion that because 60% of the people don't want to send money to Seattle for sound transit, that they're against having the roads chip sealed and giving us the money to have a match for a grant application. So, but if two of you want to put it on the on the agenda, I think it should go on the agenda for whatever the request is.
Is it?
Well, I was thinking that we should have the discussion at next week at that study session.
I'll respond to requests.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, I see your point, and I like the work the city manager has done with this. I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not opposed to a little more discussion. So I would go along with Councilmember Branstedter's request to have this item on next week's agenda.
Okay. So be it. Mr. Bulkey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John, a couple of questions. So I'm great with putting it in the 2022 program so that we can do the pavement and chip sealing, because I really do, I do think it's an incredibly valuable program. But I'm okay with waiting until February. And I'm with Mr. Whalen, our council member Whalen, on this, that we may get a chance to actually sit down again with maps and like we've done before, and really look at the various projects and where they're at and traffic counts and those kind of things in February, after you hear about all the different grants. And it sounds like we'll be hearing them at various times. So I'm going to ask you a question. It's not meant to be a gotcha or to see what you remember off the top of your head, but can you tell us off the top of your head what grants requests we have out there? In summary, just off the top of your head.
Sure, Councilmember Boakey, just don't follow my eyes.
Okay.
So we have, right now we have $26 million that's outstanding. And actually, if you back out about 7 million of it, because it pertains to state defense funding for JBLM North Access Project, as well as a federal grant of $6 million. So if you back that out, so we're essentially looking at about 18 or 19 million. And it's pedestrian safety funding through the state, it's safe routes to schools, and it's transportation improvement board. Those are the three main funding sources. In addition, I think as I have mentioned earlier, this late summer, early fall, we're also pursuing funding through the EDA, the Economic Development Authority at the federal level, and we're looking at 4 or 5 projects there as well. But the ones that have a deadline at the state level, again, are the 3 that I mentioned. And again, some of them will know by the end of this month, some will know by the end of November, and then the rest will know by the end of January. So hence, that's my reasoning for recommending, a February sit down, if you will, because then we'll know what other monies we have available.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Ms. Farmer.
The Sound Transit 3 vote was very complicated. And from all the analysis that I've read, I echo the thoughts that I've heard around the Zoom tonight, that our residents value the $20 because it's being spent locally and very visibly and tangibly over the last couple of years. So, but I am open to more discussion. I think that's a great idea. When it comes to putting money aside to 2022, it sounds like I might be the only lone voice, but I would rather provide more immediate relief. One of the problems with Sound Transit 3 is that the projects are far away and many, many, many years in the future. And so if there's something that we can do sooner rather than later, that would, I would love to entertain that option. It sounds like that could be part of the discussion in February of 2021 as to what grant monies come available. Thank you.
Mr. Whalen.
Mr. Copfield, just a question with regard to the budget discussions. I don't recall whether you already included the $800,000+ in your proposed biennium or not.
I have not, Deputy Mayor. But my recommendation again will be to include, it's actually was 814, but
Right.
we're going to revise our estimates. 830, I think it's now,
Yeah.
Ms. Kraus and I, well, Ms. Kraus is going to tell me what the estimate is.
Yeah.
Okay, let's be clear on that. So it's most likely going to be $835,000 a year. And you are correct, Deputy Mayor, that is not in either the 2020 budget or proposed for 21 and 22. My recommendation would be that we would pick up the 2020 $835,000 as part of the year-end budget adjustment,
Mhm.
and then also include that in the 21 and 22 budget. But the 21 and 22 dollars would not be allocated. They would be unallocated until this body decided what you wanted to do.
Okay, that was the method of my madness, because if we're going to have a discussion, we obviously don't want to put the cart before the horse or vice versa. So as long as it's not yet in the new proposed biennial budget, it's ripe for discussion.
That's correct, Deputy Mayor. And yeah, and I didn't want to be presumptuous to do that, with the exception of the monies that we have collected in 2020. And the reason being is because even if you wanted to rescind, even if this body decided to rescind the $20 vehicle license fee, you would most likely have to establish a date, of December 1st or January 1st. And so there's no way to give that money back. You can't give that. And if we gave it back to the Department of Licensing, they would just send it back to us. They would be like, yeah, we're not doing the work to return $20 to individuals. That's not going to happen. I'm just being upfront with you.
Yeah. Very good. Well, thank you.
So, Mr. City Manager, then you're saying the backfilling, the chip seal allocation for the biennium comes out of 2020 collections?
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay. And so to Ms. Farmers, which I'm, as I told you earlier, I'm in favor of, and to Ms. Farmer's comment, one of the options that we would have going forward would be to consider bonding the proceeds to accelerate some of those major projects.
That's correct. And the recommendation would begin using that, probably not in 21, but for sure 22.
All right. Any other questions?
Mayor, I'm sorry. Mayor, can I just ask you a quick question? So
Sure.
for next Monday, what type of staff report would this body like in regards to the agenda item?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not thinking that we need a significant staff report. I think it's more of a discussion that we have that may result in some sort of direction for staff to go from there, but nothing that they would need to prepare to us, I don't think, unless anybody has some questions they want to send to staff in the interim between now and next week.
I think it would
Yeah.
be appropriate to have no more than a one-pager, but a brief outline of what the scenario would be for a timeline for terminating the tax and what the expected economic impact to the city over the next 5 years would be.
I would like to know how much we've raised and how much we've spent and what we spent it on. And you don't have to get specific, like a map of where the pavement patching program, but where all those things were. But I think we need to know the breakdown between every year we brought in this and we've used the money for this, because I know we've used it for pavement patching, we've used it for chip sealing, but we've also used it for overlay work. So, and I just want to know the extent of what we've used that for in some summary format.
And I think I think that would be useful too, because I know in the past it had been suggested that if we attempted to go to the voters for additional funding for street improvements, that our usage of these funds could be used to build credibility. So
Yeah.
That's right.
I agree. And actually, I think a map would be a great idea if it's not too much trouble. That it would tell a very visual story.
anything else? Before we go to council comments, I had one kind of good to the order thing today. We had the broader meeting of SHAP, the South Sound Housing Affordability Partnership, basically the mayor's, county council member, and a county exec. I've been on the kind of the core team of that, and this is the larger group. There's an interest in sending out a letter signed by 20 jurisdictions to the Pierce County legislative delegation, asking for certain legislative actions. I don't see anything that's inconsistent in it with our legislative agenda. I see some things that are part of our legislative agenda. And what I'd like to do, because there's a kind of a tight time frame on this, is to send the draft out to the council members, and then at our next meeting, let me know if you have any objections. And if everybody's all right with it, I feel comfortable signing off as the city instead of doing it individually. So, Mr. Caulfield.
Mayor, may I make a suggestion, please?
Yes.
Could you please send me that letter and then I will send it out to the body? Because otherwise we might get into a Open Public Meetings Act issue. Thank you.
All right. Council comments, Ms. Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm good.
Mr. Branstetter.
I'm good, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Simpson.
I'm good, Mayor.
Mr. Volkey.
Hey, went for a walk, and I was telling the city manager earlier today on the new sidewalks, and they're not completely done. They're probably about 90% in, and it was late Sunday afternoon and a little bit cool, and there were plenty of people out there walking on the new sidewalks. So I looking forward to it. Progress is being made, and I'm understanding that there'll be some paving here, and the lights have gone up pretty much. So they're not on yet, but going very well. And I even drove down Veterans, and they're doing a great job on that. So good job.
All right, Ms. Farmer.
Yeah, talk about road projects. Holy cow. We're knocking it out of the park with those two projects. This has been one of the busiest weeks since COVID hit for me. So on Tuesday, I was privileged to sit in on the Community Services Advisory Board meeting where they were working on their deliberations for human services funding. So I believe they're going to be bringing something forward in the next couple of weeks. They had a very heartfelt conversation. On Thursday, I was at a sex offender policy board meeting where we're working on siting options for secure community transition facilities. Learning a lot on this board. We hope to have the draft of our report to the legislature this week, and then we would be voting on that finally the following week. So I should have more information for you later. And I do want to give a shout out to the mayor for attending all of the PSRC meetings. I'm only the alternate, but I was really looking forward to diving into that to PSRC. But Sex Offender Policy Board meets at exactly the same time, so I appreciate that. Thursday evening was the Pierce County Regional Council meeting, where among other things we looked at the first draft of the group's legislative agenda, which is fairly not inconsistent with our legislative agenda. Didn't have a lot to address about Lakewood items, but interesting nonetheless. And then on Saturday, I was privileged to speak at a women's march, one of hundreds across the world on Saturday, and it was right here at Lakewood City Hall. A wonderful local gal put that together, and it was a small but mighty group of women and their allies. I also wanted to mention I wanted to thank the city manager for the joint letter between this city and the school board committing to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and wanted to toss out an idea for the council's consideration. We have the joint meeting between the city council and the school board every January, I believe, and that might be an opportunity for us to discuss shared items. Maybe instead of presentations, we could have some discussion or conduct one of the listening sessions, or I don't know, just throwing that out for early consideration. January seems like a million years away at this point. That's it for me. Thank you.
Mr. Whalen.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of items. It's been a busy week, so it's been a little bit crazy, but I did have an opportunity to go to Forest Silicon Park, and I just want to encourage those of you, if you haven't had a chance to see the improvements in Angle Lane there, the amazing parking and the roundabout and the new roadway that comes down on the shoulder right by the dog park. It's truly beautiful. You know, it really is quite nice. And by the entrance to the dog park, again, if you haven't had the chance to see it, there's this incredible structure that we're building. We've talked a little bit about it. It's going to be a 4-stall restroom with some seating space and some beautiful new landscaping that's almost done. At least the dirt is in, it's swaled, and some beautiful new trees, oak trees have been planted. It really is, I think, quite an amenity, and it has only come to fruition because we planted seeds long ago, and the manager can attest to that, to get infrastructure improvements in the park. The water and the sewer line that we invested in has allowed that to come to fruition. And it may be a small thing, but for those people who go and walk the walk up, which I did the week prior, and those folks who take their dogs and have a great time at the dog park, have a full restroom with 4 stalls outside of the porta potty. It's a huge deal for people. And I think, you know, kudos to the city and the staff for getting that thing done. So speaking of funding, I have the Economic Development Board's annual retreat. The board members coming up this Wednesday. On our work plan and agenda is review and discussion of where the EDB board is with regard to its 5-year work plan. And one of the items that I was tasked to kind of bring forward to you in a council comment during the course of our budget discussions is the ask they're making of cities like Lakewood to consider increasing their contribution from historic levels to perhaps a little bit of an increased level over the next 5 years. It's a 5-year plan. We have historically contributed, I think, $20,000 a year, Mr. Caulfield, and they're asking us to consider upping that contribution to, I believe, $25,000 a year. And I believe you may have thought of inputting it into the 22, but not in the 21. The biennium, or perhaps you're waiting for further discussion from council on that, John, but that's the ask that the EDB has made. I told them I would bring it forward to you folks for consideration, and it can be part of later discussion as we get into the nitty gritty of the budget, but I wanted to let you know that that was an ask.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor, the proposed budget includes $20,000 a year each year. And the last time the EDB did this was during our budget cycle about 5 years ago. And what the council did is you increased it from 15 to 20,000, and you did it in the second year, the even numbered year. So if you wanted to be consistent, then it would be 20,000 in 21 and then 25,000 in 22.
Thank you for the clarification. So that would be an item for our collective discussion. I can bring back some more information to tell you where the investment has gone over the last 5 years. So you're armed with that information to understand the value of the investment. And I think Ms. Newton and Mr. Caulfield can give some anecdotal information on how the EDB has been a good partner with the city as well as with the county and other municipalities over the last few years. So I think they've done good by Lakewood recently. So, and the final thing, I just wanted to comment on Councilmember Farmer's thought about the upcoming school board retreat. I think it's an excellent idea to have as an agenda item. Now that we've got a commitment to hire a new FTE for equity, diversity, and inclusion, it would be an interesting topic for us to sit around the table with community leaders to say, what does that mean to each of us as individuals and perhaps as elected bodies? And I think that would be a good conversation, perhaps to be led by Grant Twyman, who is the district's equity, diversity, and inclusion officer. And I don't know if we'll have one by then for ourselves, but that would be a good topic. I think I'd welcome that. That's it for me.
All right.
16 more days. Everyone, do your civic duty to vote.
Yeah, get it out of the way so people quit calling you. I had coffee without the mayor on, or the mayor without coffee on Tuesday morning. Mr. Gum presented on the rental housing safety program. He did a great job. And there's no truth to the rumor that we're going to fund the TBD by putting up a toll booth at Far West and Stillicum, so that people who are not Lakewood residents have to pay coming and going. That would cut down the traffic on Stillicum. So, is there anything else to come before council?
Not on my end, Mayor. Thank you.
So we're now going to recess into executive session for approximately, at least initially, 30 minutes pursuant to RCW 4231.10(1)(g). To review the performance of a public employee, the council is not expected to take final action following the executive session. We'll only come back to adjourn. Council, please exit and go to the private Zoom meeting that is had been forwarded to you. So we're in recess.
Maybe give us 3 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Greetings.
Greetings.
And I don't know if it's the lighting, but your lens is a little fuzzy.
Yeah, I just noticed that. Maybe it's this office.
That's a little clearer. I think, yeah, maybe it had a little of forest fire dust left over on it or something.
I'll give it a COVID cleaning when I shut it down tonight.
You got my my signatures on stuff I left on your desk.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I sneak in occasionally.
I noticed. Thank you so much.
Well, we're down to time. So we're back from recess.